Hello, everybody. I'm Fred. I'm the CEO of Rainforest. This is my co-founder, Russell.
Hi.
And so we're going to kind of talk to you a bit about how we do continuous QA, and maybe give some ideas for those of you who are thinking of doing something similar. And we're also going to talk quite a lot about how we use Amazon's humans through an API service, Mechanical Turk, to power that. So just because we want to really kind of like double down on the anxiety in the room, we thought we might do a live demo, like unprepared, against one of your websites. So does anybody have a web application that they would like to volunteer to be tested? I'm seeing lots of head shaking. There's a hand. Graphic.com with a Q. Like this? Okay. Do we have some sort of functionality like a sign up or some? Scroll down. Verticals. Let's try this guy. And then a search. Okay, this is perfect. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll actually create a couple of simple tests against it, and then we'll run them. And then once we've gone through kind of our slides, there'll actually be some results from all of the kind of thousands of Mechanical Turk testers who are actually like online right now. So let's just kind of whiz through this. So we're going to actually, I'm going to show you indirectly Rainforest. Can everyone see? Is that?
Yeah.
That's large enough. Okay.
Maybe a bit bigger.
So basically, this is Rainforest itself, the actual application. This is where customers kind of write and maintain their test suite. And so if we go in here, we'll add graphic with a Q to our sites list. It's clearly production. Let's do, oh, wait. Oh, but this lives on Axle Geeks. So this, we can use this. Will Axle Geeks be angry with us? If we find any bugs, they might be. Okay, so let's create a test. So we're just going to test the search. It looks like Axle Geeks is a site for cars, so maybe let's just... Okay, so basically the core of testing in Rainforest is what's called steps. And a step is basically how you specify a test. So a step is an action and a question in natural language. And so there's two fundamental ideas behind Rainforest. The first is that each test should be relatively tight in scope, so test like one piece of functionality on its own, but the steps themselves can be very high level. So to show you what I mean here, given that we want to test the search, what should the tester do? Search for a car, and then what are they expecting? So let's try my trusty Honda Accord. We'll get a list of search results, hopefully. There we go. Nice. Okay, so do you see a list of cars, a relevant list of cars? So there we go. So that's our test, and it's pretty simple. So maybe let's add on some filtering stuff. So maybe filter by vehicle type. Let's add something like that. Filter by vehicle type, and then does the page update correctly? And so you can be really kind of super high level, like we are with these tests, or you can use Rainforest more like automation, where you get down and dirty and tell them, like, click on this particular input, enter this particular string. And the kind of beauty of our approach, or how we think of it, the beauty of our approach is that you can use the human brain of the human testers who back our service to get away with this kind of high-level instructions. So we have our test. Let's run it in all the browsers. Why not? And there we go. So we have an ETA of 12:04 p.m. Perfect. So this is now running, and we will check in with that periodically throughout the demo. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what Rainforest actually is, if this loads.
Just
Can you see it? Let's try like that.
Live demos.
Okay, so we'll just go through like that. So what Rainforest actually is, well, first of all, we're a company. We're based in San Francisco right now. We have about half of the team is in San Francisco, half of the team all over the world. Very small, tiny little company, only 23 people right now. And we have about 50,000 monthly active testers. And so the vast majority of all of these testers, you can think of us as basically having a giant 50,000 person QA team, and we manage this QA team programmatically. And so the QA team is sourced from Mechanical Turk. So what is QA? I mean, basically QA is about finding bugs in as efficient a way as possible. That's how we think about it. Everyone knows what QA is if you came to this session. But I think more importantly, the key idea behind Rainforest was making this notion of QA compatible with the notion of continuous delivery. Because Russell and I both had many times kind of built out a deployment and delivery process at various different places, and every time the bottleneck was the QA process. And I'm sure that's very familiar to people here. Either you invest a ton of time and engineering energy and automation so that you can have QA that's fast enough, right, so that you can actually do continuous delivery, or you're kind of bottlenecked, you're held back from continuous delivery by the QA cycle. So that's like the fundamental kind of problem that we set out to solve with Rainforest. And so, you know, when we have conversations with people, VP Engineers, CTOs, this is what we hear all the time. Basically, I'm moving fast and I'm breaking things and I'm really effing terrified about what's in production that I don't know about. Or we're not able as an organization to embrace continuous delivery because we don't have a fast enough QA process and we need to do this set of regressions every single time we release because we're an enterprise software or finance or whatever it is. So we think of this thing called continuous QA as basically being the bridge between these two worlds, the bridge between kind of CI, you know, you're running all of your kind of unit tests and stuff in development continuously, and continuous delivery. We think of it as the kind of bridge between those two. So why continuous QA? I mean, this is also kind of like asking the question of why continuous delivery. And I probably don't really have to sell anybody here on this, I guess. But just to whiz through this, you know, I think, is Bank of America going to be shipping to production 20 times a day, you know, next year? Almost certainly not, right? But will the Bank of America's engineering organization have internalized the notion that shipping as often as possible in as smaller chunks of code as possible is like the least risky, most efficient way to do things? Probably yes. And so we think the whole world is moving towards this kind of continuous delivery mode. And so what Rainforest does, what continuous QA does, is basically makes QA kind of manual-powered regression testing a seamless part of that. So then there's a bunch of stuff about basically what does continuous QA look like. I think the important stuff is that it has to be available 24/7, right? So not like maybe your QA team in-house, or maybe you have one in India, right? These guys have a time zone, they have working hours. But ultimately, your developers might want to push to production at 3 a.m. And one of our customers actually does that. And so 24/7 availability is really important. Has to be super fast, right? Because as we all know, as soon as you start sitting there waiting for your stuff to hit production, the longer it takes, the more distracted you are, and the less valuable that whole continuous delivery idea is. Has to be cross-browser. I think most of us today probably don't test comprehensively across all the browsers our customers use or are important for the business just because that takes too much time. And I think the most important thing for us has to have a really great API so that you can run and retrieve your results all programmatically, with the core objective to ultimately be the human work that you and your team do is creating and maintaining the test cases, but then the runs and the results are all kicked off as part of a continuous delivery push managed by Circle or Bamboo or whatever it is you're using. So a bit about Rainforest, or a bit more about Rainforest, I suppose. So in average, we have results in kind of under 30 minutes. We aim for 20 minutes. We found 20 minutes to be the kind of sweet spot for continuous delivery. And by results, we mean an average test suite size of 50 tests running in an average of 5 browsers. That kind of average completion time, all of those tests take to come back to you is about 20 minutes. So it's incredibly fast. And how we do that, as you'll learn in a second, is through massively parallelized execution by sending 500, 1,000, 2,000 humans to your staging environment all at once. As you can see, there's 50,000 testers. That's the monthly active number. Daily active hovers between 5 and 10,000. 24/7 availability, and fully cross-browser. So you may be thinking, well, this all sounds fine, but where does this fit? Like, why do I need this? So we think that there's kind of 2 main ways to do QA today. You can, and this is a slide from our fundraising deck, so apologies for the illegibility of it. But there's 2 basic ways to do QA today, right? You can hire humans, and so that's a spectrum all the way from, having your poor product managers do it in-house or your support people, all the way to having kind of a 5,000 person outsourced organization. Or you can do automation. And I think the fundamental thesis of Rainforest is that automation isn't the answer for the majority of web and mobile application testing. And I think that probably there's lots of diverse perspectives about how effective automation can be within the room. But ultimately, what we've seen is that having a test code base living and piggybacking on top of your actual application code base eventually slows you down or requires you to invest huge amounts into quality engineering. And so we think that automation can coexist with a kind of human-powered QA if that human-powered QA is fast enough. And so what most of our customers do, they see us as kind of the first QA hire, right? So Zenefits is a great example. We have a Zenefits developer in the audience, and he's looking worried. So how Zenefits started with us, they started using Rainforest when they were 18 people. And so they were looking and thinking, should we hire a QA person? Should we invest in quality engineering? Like, what approach should we take here? And basically what happened was they chose Rainforest. And so now they have 150 people in their engineering organization, like 1,800 people in the total company. And we are the kind of human verification layer on top of their automation. So basically, as organizations evolve and as your testing needs evolve, Rainforest can kind of play a different role depending on what you're looking for. So we're going to get past the whole pitchy stuff very quickly, so don't worry. So handing over to my brilliant co-founder, Russell, to actually talk about Mechanical Turk.
Cool. So has anybody in the room used Mechanical Turk? Cool. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. Anyway, but for those of you that don't know, Mtec is a little loved service from Amazon, but it's actually really cool. It's definitely underused. It's an API for doing microtasking, and it's powered by humans. So they have humans all over the world that sign up to get paid to do tiny tasks. You can add tasks to it using their interface or using an API, which is what most of the bigger requesters tend to do. So the coolest thing is it's elastic. So unlike something like contractors, where you would have to hire 1,000 people to be around all the time, you can put work on and then it will be done. And how quickly you want it done is not really configurable, but you can play with that based on how much money you're charging and how you treat your workers. So it's possible to do low latency on Mtec. So as you'll see from our demo, or actually you can't see this now, but when you start a Rainforest run, within 20 seconds to 60 seconds, we've got a few hundred workers starting the test. So yeah, it's very cool. And price is totally configurable by you as the end user of Mtec. So you can pay them anything from $1 up for work. So you can see it's failing. But on the right-hand side, if you scroll down for it, there's a live list of people coming into Rainforest and doing tests. Anyway, if you go back to the slides. So yeah, that's a very brief bit about Mtec. So Rainforest and Mtec. So we've basically built a lot of custom stuff on top of Mturk to make it do what we want. So we take workers who don't know anything about QA necessarily. They may, but they may not. And we automatically train them. So there's a whole system that we've built that takes a fresh worker who knows how to use a computer, but may not know anything about QA. And we teach them our style of QA testing automatically. Behind the scenes as well, there's a lot of technology to make sure we have good results and that workers that aren't doing so well are trained, or if they're not doing well after that, they're removed from our system. And then they go and do other work on other Mturk stuff. So I think the key part of Rainforest and why it's so useful is that we've given the testers the correct tooling. So after we've trained them, I'll show you this in the other demo we're going to do, but we give them the stuff they need to do the tests, which depending on what you're doing, may be a virtual machine with Windows, or it may be a phone, or at some point soon we'll try and give them Macs as well. But today it's Windows and phones, Android phones to be specific. So we connect those directly into their browser, so they don't have to have any tooling at all, and they don't have to download anything, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so Rainforest is, you can think of it as a two-sided marketplace for testing. So customers pay us, we put work out, and workers get paid to do it. So yeah, we manage the entire life cycle of testers as well. So from hiring them to training to ranking them up, or also firing them. So the tooling that we have today, we actually run it in a custom infrastructure, so it's like dedicated servers, unfortunately. Can't yet use EC2, but we're working on that. And that's basically powering the virtual machines that we give them. So we have a cluster of servers, and they come in, request, and they get given the correct machine for them. So whether that's a Windows machine or something with some custom software, it's directly put in their browser, which is pretty cool. Because we do this, it means we can do lots of crazy stuff. We can record all the network traffic in and out of the box for you as an end user to replay, but also for fraud detection and quality, we can tell what the worker's doing down to an extremely granular level, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we support all desktop stuff, so we're using KVM to run a lot of virtual machines. We're using Android as well. We're working on using Device Farm, I'm getting that wrong, in a kind of crazy way to let us use all the phones that Amazon now kindly support. So soon we'll also support phones, which will be really cool. Traditional workflow for developers is an interesting one to think about. Most orgs that have some kind of QA, or even if they don't have QA, end up doing something like this. They'll write code as an individual developer, and then they'll write tests, and then they'll push it to CI and ask it to be reviewed, and then maybe they'll get QA'd sometime later. Like basically it's normally requested that a department QAs it if there's a separate department. Now, if you look at the timings we've put, this is rough timings, but the problems are when you fail, when something goes wrong, it normally gets pushed back nearly to the first step, maybe to the test if the test was badly written, but you end up wasting a ton of time every time this cycle breaks. Plus, the cycle is really, really slow. So this is obviously the only way you can do QA with a traditional QA org. But with Rainforest, the workflow is slightly different. So you can write your code, and a developer or a PM can write the test for it. And we say PM as well because there's no code involved in writing Rainforest tests. It's literal plain English, not even cucumber-style English. It's like literal English because you're talking to a human, thanks to Mtec. And then we can run your QA in a CI environment as well. So we have technology similar to ngrok, if you've ever used ngrok, that lets us tunnel into a build server and send the humans from Mturk directly into that. So for some people that's working very well. Zenfit is actually a good example of using that. So every time a build happens on a feature branch, they can also fully QA that end to end, which is kind of crazy. And then because it's also an API call, we have a command line interface that fits in your CI. So like if you're running RSpec or JUnit or whatever, you just add another line, which is Rainforest. And then your tests execute. This is a few of the people that use this. Some of them you may have heard of. I guess the bigger ones are Cloudant, which is IBM, and Zenefits or Betterworks are pretty big startups. But yeah, there's a ton of people using it. If anybody ever wants to talk to them, let us know. So, Fred, this is one for you.
So, ROI. So, this is probably not the ideal audience to be talking about ROI because it's a bit kind of businessy, but we did a very simplified case study with Zenefits. And I think the key things to think about are not just the cost of hiring the humans to execute and or maintain your test cases, but also the throughput that's required, right? And so I think the fundamental thing that's probably different about Rainforest is that we are totally on demand. And so because we have this on-demand crowd backing us, we're able to deliver QA execution, aka like results, knowing what works and what doesn't work, on demand. And I think that's really important because, as all of us know, when we're building software, our demand for testing, our demand to understand whether stuff is working or not working is very spiky, right? Like, I want to release, I want all my test cases done now, I don't want anything for another 6 hours until I need them done again. So that's basically some rough ROI calculation about what Zenefits would have to do today if they didn't have Rainforest. So now let's get back to the demo, which is much more interesting. So let's have a look. So it looks like we got a failure here. So as Russell was saying, and we'll walk you through the interface after this, but we thought this might be fun, or fun for us at least. As Russell was saying, you know, we immediately start sending. Have I been bounced off the Wi-Fi here?
No, you're good.
Well, it looks like I'm slightly. Oh, there we go. So as Russ was saying, you can actually see the humans that we're sending down here on the right. And so if I just zoom into this a bit, each one of these little faces, and this is streaming, so this will kind of jump across the screen annoyingly, but each one of these little faces is an individual tester. And so if we scroll down here, you can see, for example, search, test, change from in progress to provisionally complete, and then this tester, whose name was Parker Little, changed this result from no result to other. So meaning he came in, he executed the test, and being unable to pass or fail the test for some reason, he clicked other. You're looking worried. So let's show some steps here. And yeah, we'll walk through that. So we have failures in all browsers in the first step, which is probably not super expected. And let's click in and find out why. So just to show you what we're doing here, if we kind of expand this to see the steps, you can see the individual steps that we wrote just a little bit earlier, and then you can see each of the browsers that we ran the test against, and you just have this kind of matrix of like where did it pass and fail, in which browser, when, right? So you can very quickly zero in. Now, typically we wouldn't expect to see all these, and I actually think this might be because I forgot to change the site. But let's have a look. Oh, so looks like maybe we took Axel Geeks down, or it went down for some reason.
It's 500ing.
Looks like it's 500ing. Well, that's too bad. Well, sorry to you, Mr. Axel Geeks. I apologize if we did something bad there.
Show them our account.
No, I will. So what's interesting here is that you can see we'll send 3 testers by default. So we'll send 3 individual humans. They'll all be given the same set of instructions against the same environment, and they'll actually all do the testing together. And so if I log out of our account, and don't worry, I'll show you this screen again. If I log out of our account, log out of this demo account, and log into our own account, where it starts to get a bit meta because we test Rainforest on Rainforest. So I'll just jump into the results before we go and show you some other stuff. So let's find one with a failure. So we do continuous delivery. We have a subset of 44 tests that get run every single time we deploy. We use Circle CI, standard Git branching workflow. basically on every pull request, Rainforest runs on every new commit. And so we're a blocking step in our push to production, which happens automatically once code hits develop. So if we go to find a failure in one of these runs, here we go. So this was yesterday, or is that yesterday? 2 days ago at 9:19 a.m. Took 40 minutes to do 44 tests. You can see the speed fluctuates, right, because it's powered by humans. So you have up here the same run taking 21 minutes. Here it's 25. This one takes 40. Let's drill into it. So we can see our failed tests and our passing tests. We can expand those and see all of these tests passed. If we drill into one in particular, we can see that view that you saw before, but with some nice green things. And then if we click into any of these, you can see the actual testers who took this particular test in this particular browser. So if I click on that, I now see our 3 testers. So we have Vanya, Kenny Ortiz, and Maria. And so basically what you see here is each one of these rows is an individual step, and then each of the columns is one of the testers. And so because it's all happening on our virtual machines, like Russell said, we're able to basically record everything that's happening, pass out the screenshots, and show that to you as the customer, right? So obviously useful if you're like, well, how the deuce did that fail? I've never seen that fail before. You can actually go in and see the verification yourself. So that's kind of one useful thing here. And I think what's also kind of interesting, and we didn't really plan this, but I think you'd probably be interested in it, is to look at the admin level view of that same job, right? So you can kind of get an idea of what is going on behind the scenes. So if we find our check tags, there we go, and then look at Firefox, this is where you can see what we see on our end, right? And so if I enlarge this a little bit, so you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that, but, oh, you can. So what you can see is that we are tracking everything the tester's doing in terms of where they're moving their mouse, where they're clicking, all of that kind of stuff. We're also, I'm not sure if you can read that, but it says clicks, keystrokes, pastes, and scrolls. So we're tracking all of those individual kind of events that the tester is doing. And then on top of that, we're tracking VM hover time. So they have instructions, and then they have a terminal with the VM within it. And so then what we do is we use deep learning, which we learned about a couple weeks ago at our on-site. We're using deep learning, which I don't understand, so don't ask me any questions about it, to basically figure out if one of these testers is behaving fraudulently or executing the test incorrectly. So if they've got lost or they started messing up, or as is sometimes a problem when you're paying people to do jobs at arm's length, they're just clicking kind of yes, 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 because they want to get paid and want to leave. So going back to the original point, which was that we basically have a 50,000 person QA team that is managed programmatically, right? If you think about how you manage other humans, you have to do kind of a combination of things, right? It's about having a carrot and having a stick. And so for us, it's exactly the same, but it's all programmatic. And so this just gives you a sense of kind of the level of data collection that we're doing right now. And this is kind of what enables us to give good results to the end customer. Because if you were to actually just say, hey, I'm going to spin up 50,000 people, I'm going to get them all to execute tests for me, and I'm just going to trust them, like, it's not going to work, right? And as everyone knows from managing humans. So if we look at our failed test, you can see that we failed in Firefox for whatever reason. And so just drilling a little tiny bit deeper into this so you can understand how to parse it. The result is this row. So other is like the middle result between yes and no. And then you see that these two guys were approved by Rainforest. So this means that algorithmically, we basically decided these guys' reputation and their agreement on a certain result was like sufficient for us to return that to the customer as like an actual failure. And so then this guy on the right was rejected because he passed the test in disagreement with these guys. So what happened here, wrong email or password, didn't work. We can drill in and verify we got that error message, doesn't load page. And then this guy, and you see that's the interesting thing, right? This guy passed the test. So this test says, can you log in? It gives you an email and password. And then you say yes, and that passes the test, or you say no, and it fails the test. Now, this tester very clearly sees wrong email or password, right? So he should answer the question, did you get logged in, with a no. But he didn't. He answered it with a yes. And that's why he got rejected by Rainforest. And so like with most things of trying to pass human stuff, that's like incredibly obvious to everyone in this room, right? Like nobody is going to pass that test or think that that test should have passed. But if you think about trying to do that programmatically, that's where the kind of complexity behind Rainforest comes in. And so the vast majority of our time is spent on this kind of stuff, basically on figuring out how can we, as fast as possible, figure out which testers are good, which testers are bad, which results are good, which results are bad, so that you as the customer, you never have to worry about any of that management.
Yeah, unlike a lot of uses of Mtec, which are or a more traditional use of Mtec, there's no correct, well, there is a correct answer, but there's no known correct answer. So we could do a test on a website and then do a test 10 minutes later and get a totally different result, and that'd be totally valid. But if you're a more traditional result thing like take stuff off a receipt or scan a business card or search for something on Google, and maybe that's a good example, bad example, but most of those have a fixed answer. Ours does not, which makes it much more complicated to get good results out of.
So just to show you a few other things around the interface. Basically, this is the list of tests. It's pretty simple. You organize tests with tags. You define which tests you want to run against which browsers. You can override all of these things on runtime. Typically, the test suite will be managed by product managers. And so I think something that we didn't really focus on in this talk at all was like the workflow changes that most of our customers go through. But I think it's quite important to understand. And the reason is that until now, at least in our experience, the product managers are the ones whose neck is actually on the line if they ship a bug, right? They're the ones who actually sign off on the release. They're the ones who say, right, this is good to go live. But today, with the current QA tooling and processes, the product managers are mostly not able to actually own QA directly. They mostly have to have it at arm's length with a QA team or with their engineering team or something similar. And so 90% of Rainforest customers actually have the product manager as the key person who owns their test suite. So if we drill into the check tag save test, this was the one we looked at the results for, you can kind of see a bit more complexity than the example that we looked at earlier. Rainforest has a bunch of helper stuff, so you can embed tests, you can reuse tests arbitrarily. There's various different pieces of logic in there to enable you to share data with your testers. So if you see in the curly braces up there, it's a very simple syntax that enables you to basically pipe rows from a spreadsheet in front of your tester. And the standard example there would be, we have a list of 1,000 test logins. We want each tester to be logged into a unique account so they don't get into collision issues. And so that's how that works. So that's what the kind of basic test looks like. And then I think the other important thing to show is what the tester sees when they actually execute one of these tests. So if we just choose one of the browsers and click Open Preview, this is going to show us the actual tester interface that the testers use to get paid to do jobs in Rainforest when it loads.
And this is embedded directly in Mtec. So when we list tasks on Mtec, they allow you to put an iframe, and this is what we put the iframe in. So we can totally control their experience, which is pretty cool.
When this loads. Nice. Heroku's down. There we go. So now hopefully we'll actually see something. Or maybe not. Give this a few more seconds before abort. Okay, it's not going to happen. So anyway, what you would have seen is you would have seen the tester instructions and then the terminal, the virtual machine underneath. And so that's one of the key things that we found out pretty early on, is that you have to decouple the browser that the tester has from the browser that you're executing the test in. Because of course, the vast majority of the testers are using Chrome and kind of on bleeding edge setups, whereas most of our customers actually want like legacy Internet Explorer platforms tested, and stuff like that. So it looks like that is still not loading. So is there anything else that we want to show you here? I don't think so. So, I think that's it. So we will be happy to take questions from anybody that's interested. After the talk, right here, we have some of the Mtec guys here if you want to chat with them. And thank you very much for your time, guys.